There is a moment, each lunar cycle, just before I leave the airlock, suit pressurized, helmet fogging at the chin seam, when my father's coin finds its way into my palm. No one in command would call it protocol, but I tap it against my thigh 3 times as the hatch unseals. Corpus Christi, his old luck. The older I get, the more I find myself repeating these small rituals, as if something that worked on Navy carriers or Texas highways might hold true on the moon's far side. If anyone in the Ready Bay notices, they say nothing. Maybe they have their own omens. The Mare Umbra outpost is a modular warren sunk deep in the lunar regolith, lead-lined, pressure-hardened, welded with the kind of grim, funding-starved functionality you get when NASA and the Department of Defense agree only on secrecy and plausible deniability. I walk the corridor to the lift, boots dragging a thin line of grey dust across the grooved flooring. Dust never comes off, not really. Not from boots or from gloves or even from your mind once you've spent a few weeks here. My visor picks up the microcrystals clinging to my knees like frost, tiny mirrors in the helmet light. Officially, Orion's Signal Division runs this place, answerable to both NASA and the Space Force. In practice, authority is whoever's willing to sign their name on the latest accident report. The outpost is a huddled cluster of pressurized modules, command, science, maintenance, mess, all branching out from the vertical shaft that leads to the surface pad. There are no windows, no way to see the lunar expanse except through layered sensor feeds and quantum optics, piped in with a few seconds of ghostly lag. Sound travels only through metal and air. Outside, nothing moves, nothing speaks. The elevator grinds up, carrying me and 3 others in silence. Deke stands at my right shoulder, Derek Shepard, security team lead, ex-ranger, his expression fixed somewhere between readiness and mild disappointment. He cradles a sealed sensor pod like it's an old wound. Opposite him, Dr. Grant Miles bounces on the balls of his feet, muttering numbers and tracing geometric figures on his knee through the suit's white polymer. Miles is our anomaly specialist, the smartest man on the base by his own reckoning, and the worst at remembering to blink when anxious. Dr. Ethan Ward waits behind me, checking the cognitive firewall settings on his neural pad for the 3rd time. The others look away, giving him space. Nobody wants to talk about what those filters are supposed to block. There's an old joke about lunar crews. The closer you get to the far side, the less people talk. Here, conversation feels risky, as if words might get lost in the wrong channel and end up somewhere you don't want them. The last thing we want is an echo event, when a stray phrase loops through the base comms and replays hours later in someone else's voice. The only sound as we rise is the click of Deke's dog tag against the metal bar and Miles's breath fogging up the comms. I break the silence out of habit. "Oath up, gentlemen." My voice comes out flat, tired. I witness, I report, I return unchanged. The Mare Umbra oath, recited every time you exit into the field. I'm not sure anyone believes it, but nobody skips it. They answer in a ragged chorus, the words more rhythm than meaning now. For a moment, I imagine Amelia, my daughter, 17, old enough to laugh at ritual but young enough to think she's immortal, watching me fumble with these old words. The elevator locks with a shudder, and the airlock systems begin their slow, measured ballet. Pressure drops, indicator lights sweep green, then amber, then a thin, threatening red before settling back. That little flicker is the outpost's way of reminding you that nothing here is built for comfort, only survival. I lead the way, stepping through the hatch onto the surface pad, where the lunar horizon splits the world between the bottomless black and the glint of Mare Umbra's glassy rim. The crater basin is older than history, its edge jagged with obsidian boulders that catch and fracture the helmet lamp's glare into broken angles. Our boots leave shallow impressions, each step slow in the moon's 1/6 gravity. The surface dust flows in slow arcs, never truly settling, sometimes lifting on eddies that don't belong to any wind. I check my HUD. Oxygen at 96%, comms at nominal. The QLO visor overlays a ghostly shimmer at the rim's edge. Quantum layer optics. Every surface EVA depends on them now. Standard helmets see nothing in the crater but darkness. But QLO shifts through stacked sensor arrays. Thermal, resonance, and quantum imaging. All bleeding together in patterns your eyes would never catch on their own. Here the watchers stand. To the naked eye, the rim looks empty, just shadows and broken stone. Only the QLO shows the truth. Dozens of humanoid silhouettes arrayed in perfect silence, cut from a mineral I've never seen on Earth. The figures are matte black at every visible wavelength, but quantum optics reveal heat signatures, geometrically perfect cores of brightness, like tiny stars buried inside them. They stand in rows, circles, and once, last week, in a slow, expanding spiral. If you blink, you'd swear they move. They never do, at least not while anyone is looking. Miles breathes out, sharp and reverent. Configurations changed since last night. The spiral offsets. Off. I need to get a new sequence before sunrise. He kneels to set up a sensor array, his gloved fingers shaking only a little. You see that, Captain? Third from the left, center line. She's 2 centimeters further east. I check the feed. He's right. Shifts like that are the reason Orion keeps sending people instead of just drones. Drones come back scrambled or don't come back at all. I kneel beside him, watching the readout jitter as he logs the new pattern into the recorder. A dense tangle of numbers, coordinates, timestamps. Deke circles the group, his posture rigid, weapon holstered, but his eyes scanning every line of the horizon. Ward hangs back, glancing repeatedly at his pad, lips moving as he runs a baseline memory test on himself. Then on us. Deke's voice crackles in my ear. 3 minutes, Captain. Keep it tight. That sensor pod's burning through power. Understood. Ward, anything on cognitive drift? I say, partly for discipline, partly for comfort. Protocol says you check. Experience says you check twice. He answers without looking up. Baseline with intolerance. For now. I'll know more if we finish before the QLO lag kicks in. His tone is dry, stretched thin by lack of sleep. I know he's right to worry. Prolonged exposure scrambles more than just numbers. There's a ripple on my visor, like a shadow that slides along the inside of my display, not outside. The Faraday shade, the old-timers call it. Sometimes you see it on the consoles, sometimes just in the corner of your eye. There's no sound, just a momentary drop in my heart rate, a rush of cold behind my eyes. I force myself not to glance away. Miles doesn't see it. He's too absorbed in his calibration. Deke notices, though. His eyes snaps to me, a silent question. I shake my head. Nothing. Keep scanning. You never say you saw it. That's another unwritten rule. Suddenly, Miles freezes. Wait. The formation recorders are out of sync. He's kneeling now, both hands on the ground, watching the display as numbers blur and jump. I crouch beside him, the coin digging into my glove. On the screen, the watchers seem to blur, not move, but the thermal points rearrange, sliding in patterns my mind can't follow. Deke swears quietly. Ward behind us mutters, "Echo event, I'm logging it, don't stare too long." I force myself to blink, to look away. A bead of sweat breaks against my brow. I exhale and count backwards from 5, another ritual. We finish the recalibration in silence, Deke keeping the time. As I stand, I see a small object wedged in the regolith by my left boot, a slip of thin plastic, folded and marked with grease pencil. I pick it up. Check your seals twice, come home once, Morse. Caleb Morse, the outpost janitor, maintenance ghost, the only man who seems to predate even the original construction crews. No one knows when he sleeps. He appears, fixes what needs fixing, and leaves notes like these where you least expect them. Never in the same place twice. Some of the new arrivals think he's a superstition. The rest of us listen when he speaks, and wonder what he knows. Ward finishes his scan and signals, "We need to go. Cognitive lag starting. I'm getting echo on short-term recall." His voice is clipped, and I see the tremor in his hands. We retrace our steps, boots trailing thin arcs of dust toward the airlock. Deke is the last in, sweeping his gaze back toward the watchers. They moved again, he says quietly. Inside, the base feels even smaller than usual. The regolith damp air tastes of iron and burnt plastic, contaminants from the latest filter swap. The maintenance hatch outside the medbay buzzes with a high, stuttering tone as Morse crouches over a busted panel, tools splayed around him in perfect cryptic order. He glances up, unsmiling. "Welcome back, Captain. Sensors out again?" His voice is dry as regolith dust. "Just recalibration," I say, pulling off my helmet. My skin prickles in the humid air. He wipes a grease-smudged hand on his coverall and shrugs. "Be sure you write it up. Patterns off, always off before the rot sets in." He tucks a crumpled note into the hatch seam. Someone else's warning, perhaps. We pass through decontamination, showers of electrostatic charge to lift the dust, a scan for quantum scar traces, which are thankfully absent today. Miles disappears toward the lab, muttering equations. Ward lingers, rubbing his temples, checking the time lag on his memory pad. Deke stations himself at the main terminal, keying in a brief security report. He catches my eye, nods once, reassurance, or maybe defiance. It's hard to tell with him. I sit at my desk in command, logging the event. Routine sensor recalibration. QLO lag observed. Minor echo event. Watcher formation changed. Further analysis required. The words feel empty, as if I'm writing them for someone else, some future investigator who will read them long after we're gone. Amelia's photo, an old one, her braces still shining, her eyes skeptical, stares back at me from the corner of the display. As I finish the report, I find another note tucked into the helmet storage bin. It's written in a tight, looping script. "Keep it tight. Some locks are meant to hold." For a moment, I want to laugh, or shout, or just put my fist through the screen. Instead, I close my eyes and let the silence settle in, heavy and absolute, the only real constant on Mary Umbra. The coin is still in my palm, warm with the memory of home. Out there, the watchers stand in their unbroken rows, silent and waiting. I don't know if they watch us, or if we're just a glitch in their endless equation. But I know one thing already. Some things shift only when you're looking, and once you see the pattern start to break, it's already too late to look away. Lunar midnight is an idea, not a fact. There's no sun to mark the hour, only the clocks on the command wall, and the fatigue in your bones. The outpost's lighting cycles shift every 2 weeks to keep us from losing all sense of time. Still, the hours bleed together. On nights like this, sleep is theoretical. I make the rounds after the event log. The outpost is never quiet. There's always a hiss from the air cyclers, a distant tap as the thermal pipes contract and expand with the day's minute temperature swings. The regolith outside groans, shifting weight after microseismic tremors. I've come to depend on these sounds, the way a child listens for the click of their parents' shoes in the hall. Silence here is the real danger. Passing through the central spine, I catch a whiff of citrus from the maintenance bay, a new shipment of decon wipes, rationed but hoarded by Morse, who always seems to find them first. The mess hall is empty except for Stove's battered mug perched on the edge of the hot plate, a ring of powdered broth dried around the rim. Someone scrawled a warning on a napkin. Don't look at them at dawn. Stove's hand, maybe, or a copy. His rules are everywhere. It's become a ritual, a talisman against whatever seeps in from the crater rim. I run my finger along the edge of the mug before moving on, half believing the old superstition that it keeps the nightmares at bay. In the main control module, Deke is hunched over the base schematics, jaw clenched, one leg stretched straight to ease the ache in his bad knee. His jacket hangs over the back of the chair, sleeves inside out, a battered dog tag catching the workstation's glow. The badge clipped to his chest reads, Phase Captain, a title that means, in effect, if I'm gone or incapacitated, he has the last word. It's a detail command never lets us forget. Sensors holding for now. Morse rewired the exterior array, again. Said the thermal relays were talking to each other. He glances sideways, not quite meeting my eyes. You want him on a leash. You give me one bigger than this base. Let him be. He gets results. I slide into the seat across from him, scanning the most recent incident reports. A column of red marks, minor power drops, skipped logs, a brief comms blackout in Sector C. The same cluster of issues, always after an echo event. Deke snorts. Grant's got his pet project loaded up. Wants to run the probe at 0300 before the next shift. Said something about a harmonic match to the lost transmission. Thalassa 4. Is that on the schedule? I ask, though I know the answer. No, sir. You want me to pull his plug? Not yet. I want eyes on it. The moment hangs between us, thick with a familiarity that doesn't require trust, only repetition. Deke, if you see something out there, something that doesn't fit, log it, even if it's just a shadow, even if it's just you. He shrugs, not quite a nod. We're all accounted, sooner or later. The phrase is code here. Those who've seen the Watchers move, or think they have. It's both curse and badge of honor. I leave Deke to his diagrams and descend the ladder to the lab. The hatch is marked with a strip of black tape, Grant's way of warning off casual traffic. I knock, out of respect or habit, and step inside. Miles is hunched over a quantum probe the size of a shoebox, the lid peeled back to reveal a dense tangle of copper threads and sapphire-colored chips. The walls are papered with printouts, patterns, rows of Watcher silhouettes traced in highlighter, equations running to the edges of the page. He doesn't turn. You see the shift last night. His voice is hoarse from hours of speech, maybe to himself. I saw. Your probe ready? I study the lines under his eyes, the way his fingers tremble as he sets the calibrator in place. It's not enough to watch them, Joel. They're broadcasting. Those lost deep space signals, Vega's last ping, the Atalanta array, those weren't random. They match the Watcher's changes down to the millisecond. He points at a screen looping with time-stamped graphs, red peaks surging as the figures shift. Command wants answers, not patterns, I say. Patterns are answers. You're thinking linearly. The Watchers run a calculation we're only catching fragments of. If I can decode the formation tonight, I think I can... He stops, chews the inside of his cheek. I can prove the lock is math, not just myth. I suppress the urge to correct him. You need security for the probe? He nods. Deke's already threatened to smash it if it so much as glitches the AI. I need Ward's sign-off on the cognitive filters, just in case. As if conjured, Ward appears in the doorway, eyes shadowed by fatigue, memory pad clutched to his chest. He pauses, scanning the room as if hunting for something that might jump out and bite. I've set the firewall to max, Ward says, his voice brittle. Short-term memory will log anything anomalous, but it'll trigger an auto-erase if we start to spiral. We'll lose the last 10 minutes, but keep the baseline. He rubs his thumb across the smooth stone he carries. I don't like this. We're pushing exposure thresholds. Miles just laughs, a thin, brittle sound. If we wait, the pattern will shift again. The Watchers won't wait for us to be ready. Ward's eyes meets mine, searching for permission to protest. I give him nothing but a nod. Go with Miles. Run it by the book. If anything feels off, you call it. Ward leaves, muttering a checklist. Miles returns to his wires. I linger, watching his hands move with obsession, a man who'd pick a lock just to see what breaks. I wander back through the crew quarters. Past the bunk rooms, a single overhead flickers. Not the bulb, but the wiring itself, crackling in irregular intervals. Morse crouches beneath it, pliers working a stripped nut, whistling a melody I half recognize from somewhere long ago. He glances up, one eyebrow arched. Did you check your seals twice, Captain? Every time, Morse. He grins, a rictus flash of yellowed teeth. Don't trust the systems tonight, not after the rot sets in. Some patterns you let lie. He tucks a slip of copper wire into the junction box, scrawls a note with a chunk of graphite and pushes himself upright. I notice, just before he leaves, the smudge of lunar dust on his knees, darker than normal, tinged with a faint iridescence. I think of pale rot, the old superstition that says equipment exposed to the Watcher's presence starts to decay from the inside, turning brittle or unreliable. Maybe Morse knows the truth, or maybe he just knows how to survive. The clock hits 0300. I make my way to the observation bay, little more than a reinforced room with QLO feeds and racks of signal sanitizers. Miles and Ward are already there, huddled over the quantum probe, the tension between them sharp enough to taste. Deke stands by the door, arms crossed, face closed. Ward keys the sequence, eyes darting between us and his readout. Firewall is up. Grant you have 5 minutes. Any anomalies, we pull you out. Miles nods, voice breathless. Copy that. The probe chirps, then launches a beam of modulated quantum light at the Watcher's formation, relayed by the rooftop array. At first, the figures stand as they always do, motionless, lined up along the crater rim. Then, all at once, the thermal points slide, as if being shuffled by an invisible hand. The Watchers change configuration, their positions shifting in real time, forming a spiral I've only seen in ancient ammonite fossils. It's subtle, no movement to the naked eye, only on the quantum overlay. But something's off. It's as if the world just inhaled and held its breath. A low groan reverberates through the module like the whole base is flexing. Ward doubles over, clutching his temples. Miles's eyes go wide, wild, as he whispers a string of numbers. Deke swears, grabbing the emergency comms override. A silence falls, heavy and suffocating. Words slip away from me, names, faces, even the sequence of numbers on the screen. I sense my own memories evaporating, the core of who I am dissolving in a cold wash of dread. I hear myself gasp, as if surfacing from black water. The clock has jumped ahead 10 minutes. My hands shake, clutching the edge of the console. Ward slumps against the wall, breathing in short, ragged bursts. Deke steadies Miles, who is staring at the probe like it's a weapon. Echo event, Ward croaks, checking his pad. Baseline's gone. I lost the last 10 minutes. Log shows. Corrupted data. Captain, we need to pull out. Miles sits, stunned, his eyes red and unfocused. They answered, he whispers. The Watchers answered. Deke helps him up, his grip tight, jaw set. We're done for the night. I scan the room, the QLO feed jitters, every third frame missing. My own log is blank, a gap where there should be memory. The image of the Watchers lingers, spiraled, bowing or reaching, I can't be sure. The smell of ozone and dust fills the room. There is no comfort in ritual tonight, only the sense that the pattern has changed and that it's waiting for us to notice. No one slept after the spiral. Lunar morning came without fanfare, just a change in the character of the outpost's lights, less a sunrise than a technical reset. I watched the color temperature drift from pale to a hard-edged blue, as if someone was testing the boundaries of what counted as day. The habit of logging the night's events felt pointless. The logs themselves had gaps, entries cut off mid-sentence, timestamps lost in the translation between modules. Memory and record drifting apart like ice flows on a black sea. I sat in command, running fingers along the seam of the console, feeling the burrs where Morse's tools had nicked the metal during his last round of upgrades. On my wrist, the suit seal left a fresh indent, red and itching, a lingering mark that matched my own restlessness. The data screens bled static whenever I tried to access the previous shift's quantum imaging. Cipher ash, the system flagged. I had to squint just to make sense of the incident reports. Strings of corrupted text, some repeating the same phrase. The pattern is not the pattern. I found Deke by the hatch. Gear laid out in a precise, almost reverent order. Utility knife, patch kit, 3 spare oxygen canisters, all placed in a neat triangle. He checked each one with a tap of his thumb. ritualistic as a man laying out his uniform for burial. Ward's running baseline checks again. Half the crew woke up with blanks in their memory logs. He closed the canister with a click. Tech 6 doesn't remember last night at all. Doesn't even know his own bunk. Could be the firewall. Could be... not. His jaw worked. Grant's in the lab. Says he cracked the first layer of the Watcher math. Wants to try again. I told him to wait for your say-so. A pause. We're stretched, Joel. You can feel it. The edge. People holding it together with duct tape and coffee. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I was still trying to pin down the events of the night. What I'd actually seen. What I'd lost. The image of the Watchers, spiral-bowed, lingered at the edge of recall like a word you know, but can't quite say. Down the hall, I passed a closed bunkroom door. The sign above it hand-scrawled, Silence Bleed Zone. Ward's writing. An unofficial quarantine for anyone who'd lost too much time. The lab felt different, brighter, but not cleaner. Miles had papered the glass wall with fresh printouts. Every surface covered in marker-scribbled math, thin lines running into dense whirls of numbers. He didn't turn when I entered, but I saw the strain in the line of his shoulders. He was eating freeze-dried fruit one piece at a time, chewing methodically, as if reminding himself of the proper order of things. I mapped the sequence, he said without preamble, tapping at the data table. The Watchers respond to our observation, not just to us being here, but to the act of watching, the actual collapse of the waveform. Every time we look, the pattern destabilizes a little more. It's recursive. I think the lock is failing. He looked up, eyes glassy. We're the variable, Joel, not the solution. The variable. I walked the length of the lab, passing a tray of regolith samples, some now laced with greenish mold, spiral-veined and brittle. Equipment logs flagged them as pale rot suspected. The last core sample was missing its containment tag, a bad sign. If rot spread, it could short out the base's power, or worse. Ward came in, shoulders tight, eyes darting from me to Miles and back. The firewall's holding for most, but I'm getting bleed through. People waking up speaking in math, or forgetting why they're even here. Memory wipes only buy us so much time. Some things come back anyway. And the AI... He trailed off, gesturing at the console where the base's lunar bastion AI status wheel spun without completing its check. Rebooted twice, he said quietly. The last cycle, it flagged Morse's maintenance logs as external input. Then it wiped them. All of them. Miles made a sound halfway between a laugh and a groan. Morse is the only one who remembers how this place works, and now the AI's trying to forget him. I tried to muster authority. We're not running another probe, not until we get the firewall stable and not without full security protocol. I turned to Ward. You said memory wipes aren't holding. How bad is it? He rubbed the bridge of his nose. I think the exposure's cumulative. Each event gets harder to erase. Some crew are losing entire shifts. Deke's right. We're holding things together by habit, not discipline. I don't know how much longer we can function as a unit. I stepped back, letting the silence settle. The Watchers were out there, silent, unreadable, but we were the ones coming apart. Morse found me by the hatch, hands blackened with grease, a cut bleeding down his knuckle. He looked up at me. You see the pattern yet, Captain? He asked, voice low and patient. Just cracks and broken memories. He nodded, as if that was the right answer. He slid a note into my palm, warm from his grip. You want the lock to hold, you need to stop picking at it. Sometimes a door's shut for a reason. He glanced at the core sample tray. If you see anything in there that doesn't belong, put it back. Don't think about it. He left as suddenly as he'd appeared, boots leaving dusty arcs on the tile. Deke called me back to command with a terse ping. The main display was stuttering, the quantum imaging feed freezing every third frame. His posture was all nerves, 1 foot braced, dog tags spinning between his fingers. We've got movement on the lower level, something dragging, Can't get a visual, but sensors say it's big. He paused. The AI says it's probably equipment. I don't buy it. I thumbed the comms. Ward, lock down the lower sector. Miles with me. We moved as a group. Deke in front, me behind, Miles with a sensor wand, Ward last with a portable firewall node. The hallway to the lower module was darker, the light stained with a green cast from the emergency panel. The air was cold, sharper than usual. I heard, or thought I heard, a slow scrape, metal on stone, something heavy shifting just out of sight. Deke signaled a halt. Whatever it is, it stopped behind storage. He drew his sidearm, steady. We go slow. We rounded the corner. The storage door stood ajar, a thin smear of black on the wall where someone had brushed against it. Inside, the temperature was a few degrees lower than the rest of the base. Regolith tracked in rough, uneven lines across the floor. I caught the faintest scent. Ozone and something older, mineral and sour, like spoiled water. A containment scarab drone sat powered down by the far wall, its legs locked, sensors blinking at odd intervals. Miles crouched, sweeping the sensor wand. Core samples gone, he muttered. Logs wiped. There's a secondary anomaly. Here. He pointed to a patch of regolith, disturbed, spiraled, as if something had dragged itself in a tight circle, then vanished. Ward snapped a series of photos, hands shaking. I'm logging this. No one leaves this room without a full check. We sealed the door, Deke patching the handle with a strip of emergency tape. Nobody comes down here unless I say so, he barked, his voice edged with fear. Back upstairs I sat, bone-tired, at my desk. The QLO visor sat beside the logbook, its lens scratched, the words, "The calculus shifted last night," scratched into the metal, Morse's note still pressed in my palm. I made a decision. No more probes, no more experiments, not until we figured out what was unraveling. I signed the order. Hold, observe only, record, do not interfere. But even as I wrote, I knew it wasn't enough. The watchers were already changing, responding to our gaze. The base, my crew, even my own mind, everything was unraveling, one observation at a time. As I closed the log, I found myself staring at the scratched surface of my father's coin, tracing the outline as if memory could be carried in the grooves. Outside, the watchers stood, silent, unmoving, arrayed in their ancient equation. But now I understood. The calculus was broken and we were the variable, and something was moving beneath the surface, waiting for us to look again. The outpost's clocks lied to me all day. My wrist display advanced in a regular digital crawl, but time inside the base had broken open. Conversations drifted, meetings reset halfway through, and I found myself writing the same order on 3 separate screens before realizing I'd already signed off. Something fundamental inside me had slipped. When the lights dropped to their night setting, it was Morse who found me sitting by the decon lockers, helmet in my lap, boots stained with black-green dust from the storage breach. He stood framed by the hatch, one hand pressed to the jamb as if feeling for vibration or life. "You get any sleep, Captain?" he asked, voice calm as ever. I shook my head, studying the crescent indentation in my thumb, where I'd pressed my father's coin too hard. "I dream, Morse. That's the problem." He handed me a folded slip of material, torn from the edge of a ration pack. The handwriting was mine, but the words were unfamiliar. Reset the sequence, record nothing, scramble the lock. I had no memory of writing it. I felt old, used up. Morse looked at me for a long moment, eyes kind and unblinking, then turned and disappeared down the corridor. It was close to shift change when the emergency siren started. Short, cutting, nothing like the old warbling alarms back home. This sound made my molars ache. I sprinted to command, boots slipping on the metal grid. Deke was already at the security terminal, face grey, sweat shining at his hairline. Ward stood hunched by the wall, eyes wild, one hand squeezing the memory stone so tightly I thought it might shatter. Miles, pale and unshaven, stared at the QLO feed, whispering numbers in a trembling monotone. "Containment breach," Deke snapped. "Not just the storage module. Now it's showing up in the main corridor, and I've lost the AI link to the medbay. Morse is unaccounted for." He locked the outer doors with a jab of his wrist, then looked at me, as if waiting for orders I wasn't sure I could give. The screens glitched again, but this time the error didn't resolve. The feed from the QLO array showed the Watchers rearranging, no longer in neat lines or spirals, but clustered in dense, knotted formations, figures leaning toward the basin's center, arms extended, not quite touching. For a moment I thought I saw them sway. Miles's voice cut through the panic. "It's the pattern. We've broken it. Every measurement, every log, it's all fed into the lock. Our interference has corrupted the sequence. The Watchers can't hold the containment on their own anymore." Ward shook his head, backing away from the screen. "Echo event in 3 modules. I'm seeing cognitive collapse in the logs. People looping, repeating actions, language dropping out. The firewall can't filter it fast enough. I need..." He gasped, losing the thread. "I need to deploy the cleanser." He fumbled with the emergency kit, pulling out a vial of mnemonic cleanser, a nasal spray that burned going in but erased the last 10 minutes. I let him administer it. I trusted his judgment, even as I feared what it might cost us. The alarm shifted pitch, sharper, almost melodic, a keening that threaded through my skull. Outside, through the QLO feed, the Watchers all bowed as one, the gesture jerky, inhuman. For the first time, the regolith around the crater rim seemed to move, slow, undulating, as if breathing. I heard Ward retching in the corridor. Miles sat on the floor, clutching his notebook like a shield. I forced my way to the communications terminal. "Command to all crew, lockdown protocol. Destroy all quantum imaging, no more observation. Repeat, disable all feeds, scramble logs, secure in place and await further orders. No one goes outside, no one opens the doors." My voice came out hoarse, foreign. I didn't know if anyone was still listening. Deke approached, gun drawn, jaw set. "We need to initiate stain protocol. If the lock's gone, the only way to buy time is to wipe every trace, erase the data, break the imaging, get out while we can." He was right. I hated him for it. Ward returned, face pale but eyes clear. "The crew can't hold. People are losing themselves by the minute. My firewall's degrading. Whatever the Watchers held in check, it's leaking into us now." Miles, still on the floor, stared at the QLO visor in his hands. "If we run, the lock will fail. If we stay, it unravels with us inside. There's no solution, only trade-offs." The comms snapped. Brief static, then silence. For an instant, the feed from the medbay surged on, Morse's face lit by the green glow of his headlamp, staring directly into the camera. His voice, steady, almost gentle. "Some things you can't fix, Captain. I've shut down the power to the lower modules. I'll hold the door." The feed cut. I never saw him again. We moved fast then. Deke oversaw the destruction of the quantum imaging arrays, his movements brutal and practiced, as if shattering the lenses could somehow unsee what we'd seen. Ward administered cleanser to those he could, logging each as memory wiped, partial. I locked down the command logs, entering a tangle of ciphers I knew I'd never remember. Miles's final act was to destroy his notes, burning pages in a dish until the air was sharp with chemical smoke. He muttered equations even as they turned to ash, as if the numbers themselves might outlast him. We gathered in the airlock, last 4 standing, myself, Deke, Ward, and Miles. The siren had gone silent, replaced by a vibration in the floor that made my teeth buzz. "On my order," I said, voice shaking but unbroken. "We leave. We do not look back. We do not speak of what we saw. We hold the lock by turning away." No one argued. Deke keyed the hatch. Ward clutched the cleanser and stared into space. Miles closed his eyes, lips moving in silent prayer or calculation. I took one last look at the command display. Outside, the Watchers had resumed their line, but their heads were bowed, arms at their sides, as if exhausted by the weight of their own silence. The regolith at the center of the basin had split, a thin, ragged fissure, darkness welling up from beneath. I didn't want to know what lay there. Some doors, as Morse had said, are shut for a reason. We stepped out into the lunar cold, not heroes, not survivors, just variables finally removed from the equation. And behind us, in the world's oldest silence, the calculus began again. The surface felt different in retreat. Dust clung to my boots in hard-edged whirls, trailing behind each step, blurring my footprints with those of the others. My breath rasped inside my helmet, uneven and hot, collecting on the inside of the visor. I focused on the scrape of my glove over the hull's worn rail, the tension in the cables that ran from the airlock up to the communication mast, a web meant to keep us from drifting away if the world slipped just a little more. Deke took point, motion crisp despite the limp that grew worse with every uneven patch of ground. Ward followed, arms locked around the canister of cleanser as if it were ballast. Miles trailed last, his movements disjointed, almost drunken, as he kept his eyes fixed to the regolith rather than risk meeting the Watcher's shadows. The lunar gravity made our escape both weightless and exhausting. Each step was slow, as if time itself conspired to keep us close to the rim. The outpost's emergency beacon flashed against the black, nothing but a blue strobe, barely visible in the void. Morse was gone. I caught myself glancing back, searching for his silhouette at the hatch, some sign of the man who'd survived everything but this. Nothing. The airlock remained dark, door sealed with a single strip of graphite tape, his mark. I wondered what stories would be left for anyone who found this place in a century, if the logs remained, if memory could even cross that kind of distance. Our transport module was an ugly, practical beast, white paint scorched away, seams patched by Morse's own hand, the Orion signal logo half buried under a layer of dust. I punched in the code, feeling the keys stick under my fingers. The hatch cycled open with a cough, oxygen venting out in a frosted burst that bit at my skin. We tumbled inside, not speaking, not even looking at one another. I was last to remove my helmet, the click echoing like a shot in the cramped module. Deke collapsed into the nearest jump seat, eyes closed, breathing in through his nose as if to steady himself. Ward pressed his head against the cabin wall, whispering numbers I recognized as baseline checks, his self-soothing or maybe an incantation against what was already fraying inside his skull. Miles, gaunt and wild-eyed, wiped at his face, leaving streaks of black across his cheeks. None of us spoke Morse's name. I keyed the launch sequence. The transport shuddered, rising on a pillar of white spray, vibrations running up my spine. I watched the outpost shrink beneath us. No windows, just the sensor feed, now rendered into nothing but blur and artifact. I told myself I'd remember every detail, that memory alone would mark what we'd done. But I could already feel it thinning, stretched like a wire across too great a distance. The trip to the relay station passed in a blur of checklists and silence. Ward administered the last of the cleanser to Miles, and then to himself. Deke refused, staring instead at the floor with a look I'd seen before only in men who'd made it out of burning wrecks. We docked, stowed our gear, and locked the module for quarantine. Regulations said we were to transmit a full incident report, but the words caught in my mouth. I sat at the comms console, eyes bleary, knuckles white. The keys stuck as I typed, the language coming in broken fragments. This is Reeves. Mayor Umbra outpost abandoned. Calculus destabilized. Containment compromised. Quantum imaging destroyed. Watchers sequence. Partial reset. Crew memory. Incomplete. Evacuated per Stain protocol. Anomaly and basin do not attempt direct observation. Recommend. Full embargo. Indefinite. Further. The connection splintered. First static, then a shrill surge of data that filled my headset with the hiss of an ancient transmission. My hand hovered over the record switch. I could see, or thought I could see, the basin's rim in my mind, those dark figures lined up bowing in silence. The fissure at the center yawning wider, the watchers reshuffling in endless calculation. The message would be fragmentary at best, riddled with mathematical ghosts. Maybe that was the only truth left to carry home. We spent one more night in the relay, sleeping in shifts, keeping the lights low. Deke cleaned his weapon and said nothing. Ward reread his own logs, each time marking another line through a section he could no longer recall. Miles took a knife to what was left of his notebook, tearing out the spiral-bound core, crumpling pages in his hands. I dreamed of Morse standing at the hatch, eyes bright, asking if I'd checked my seals. By the time the recovery shuttle docked, it was clear that none of us would leave unchanged. Deke's gait had slowed, his right leg dragging as if it carried the full weight of every unanswered question. Ward, gaunt, hands trembling, smiled at the medtechs with hollow courtesy, unable to meet my eyes. Miles's face was blank, scraped clean of the wild conviction that had driven him to the edge. I made my report to command, each word forced out like a confession. They asked about the lock, about what we'd seen beneath the basin, if the watchers had moved, if the breach could be reversed. I lied where I had to, told the truth when it didn't matter. I kept Morse's note tucked in my logbook, a memory no firewall could cleanse. The official word was silence. Debriefings in windowless rooms, interviews with men and women who'd never been further from home than Houston or DC. They used words like containment and anomaly, as if they could box up what we'd brought back. We passed psych evals by giving the right answers, or none at all. Sometimes late at night, I find myself standing at my window, watching the moon crest the horizon over the city. I catch the glint of light on a telephone wire, the hush that falls before the world wakes. I think of the watchers, realigning in the darkness, unseen and unremarked. I keep my own rituals now. Before sleep, I whisper the oath. I witness, I report, I return unchanged. A lie, but one I need. On the far side, the Mayor Umbra outpost sits abandoned. Silent, the corridors drifting in lunar dust, memory wiped clean by time and intent. The watchers have resumed their calculation. Formation precise, the fissure sealed. What we left buried there is quiet again, for now. But I remember. I remember Morse's warnings, the taste of copper in the air, the way the pattern buckled when we watched. I remember what it cost us to look and what it cost us to turn away. The calculus holds, by absence, by silence, by scars no one will ever see. Some locks are meant to hold and some silences are meant to last forever.